Forget everything you've been told about fitting in, because the more you chase approval, the more you surrender your mind. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Every time you silence your real thoughts just to blend in, you're not just losing your voice, you're erasing your own story. But what if the crowd's applause is actually your biggest enemy? Machiavelli and the greatest minds in philosophy knew. Society rewards obedience, not originality. That's why most people end up living as extras in someone else's script, never the author of their own life. In this video, we're pulling back the curtain on the hidden forces shaping your identity. If you've ever wondered why authenticity feels so risky, or why critical thinkers always seem to walk alone, you're in the right place. This isn't self-help fluff. This is a deep dive into the psychology of conformity, the Machiavellian rules of social power, and the art of reclaiming your mind. Ready to stop performing and start thinking for yourself? Let's break the script before it breaks you. Machiavelli didn't write for the masses. He wrote for minds willing to rule themselves. If you're still with me, maybe that mind is waking up inside you. Let's be honest, every social interaction has a price. You smile when you're uneasy. You agree when you want to object. You say yes just to avoid being the odd one out. Every time you do, you trade a little clarity for a little comfort. And then you wonder why you're exhausted after a party, why you feel disconnected even when you're surrounded by people, why your own voice has grown quiet. It's because you've been shouting to please others and whispering when it comes to yourself. You think you're evolving, but you're just adapting, sanding off every edge of your character until you fit in so well you disappear. And the world applauds your disappearance because a docile mind is easier to control. Machiavelli warned us, in politics and in life, the appearance of virtue is often more useful than virtue itself. But hidden in his words is a deeper warning. When you start living for appearances, you forget how to live with depth. Because once you become easy to digest, you stop being nourishing. The more you socialize to be liked, the more you become like everyone else and less like yourself. Every forced laugh, every handshake you regret, every silence you keep to protect your image, it all adds up. Brick by brick, you build a prison that looks like popularity from the outside, but feels like mental decay from the inside. And the tragedy is, you don't even know it. You believe you're thriving because people are smiling at you. But what they're smiling at isn't you. It's your mask. And you start to believe the mask is who you are. That's when the real danger sets in. Not because you've become less intelligent, but because you've stopped thinking from your core. You've outsourced your judgment to the group. And let's be real. The group doesn't want wisdom. It wants comfort, consensus, predictability. It wants you to play your role. Be the funny one, the agreeable one, the unthreatening one. But never be the one who reminds others of what they've abandoned. Because if you do, they'll turn on you. Not because you're wrong, but because you're right. Your presence becomes a mirror they don't want to face. So you stay quiet, you nod, you laugh on cue. And each time, your mind dulls. Not all at once, but gradually. The sharpness of your thoughts is replaced by trivia. The fire in your gut is replaced by politeness. Your questions become scripted. Your dreams become marketable. And worst of all, you don't even resist. Because conformity has a master trick. It makes you feel smart while you're blending in. It whispers, "You're doing well. Everyone likes you." And that whisper drowns out the roar of your real self. The one that once wanted to question, to rebel, to be authentic at any cost. But not anymore. Now you want to be sociable, to be liked, to belong. And the price for that is your edge, your soul, your silence. Machiavelli said, men are driven by two main forces, love and fear. But in our age, there's a third, validation. You want to be validated so badly, you'll betray yourself for a heart emoji. You'll water down your mind for a seat at the table. You'll echo opinions that aren't yours just to avoid being the only one without an echo. And then you go home wondering why your thoughts feel like static. You think you're depressed. You think you're anxious. Maybe you are. But maybe, just maybe, you're overdosed on sociability. You've inhaled too much groupthink, and now your mind can't breathe on its own. This isn't about becoming a hermit. It's about recovering your ability to think without interference, to act without performance, to be without seeking applause. Machiavelli never begged to be understood. He wrote as if the reader was ready. If the reader wasn't, he didn't care. That's the spirit missing in today's world. People care too much. They want to be understood, liked, followed. But true intelligence doesn't beg to be received. It radiates, it polarizes, it divides. It doesn't ask for permission to exist. It just exists. Even if the room goes quiet, even if the party moves on, even if the group pretends not to hear. Because the group is allergic to self-respecting minds. Why? Because they can't mold you. And people hate what they can't mold. So they'll label you arrogant, difficult, cold, detached. But what they really mean is, you remind me of the freedom I gave up. And that will make them uncomfortable. Your clarity becomes their curse. Here's where the real test begins. Will you soften yourself again just to soothe their discomfort? Or will you stand in your raw, burning truth and let the room adjust to you? Most won't. That's why the average person is easy to predict, easy to please, easy to lead. Because they've trained themselves not to think too deeply, not to speak too honestly, not to live too independently. They fear the consequences of real thought. And in that fear, conformity finds its most loyal host. Because conformity doesn't always look like ignorance. Sometimes it looks like charm, like sociability, like being liked by everyone. But under the surface, it's rot. It's decay. It's a soul traded for handshakes and smiles. Now you face a choice you've been avoiding for years. Will you keep kneeling to social ease? Or will you finally sharpen the blade of your mind and cut through the noise? Will you dare to be misunderstood, to be disliked, to be rejected? Not because you failed, but because you refused to fake it? That's where Machiavellian clarity begins. Not in dominating others, but in ruling yourself. Not in pleasing crowds, but in walking away from them without guilt. Not in networking, but in nourishing yourself. Not in applause, but in solitude. Because solitude, when chosen, isn't emptiness. It's power. It's the forge where the real self is tempered. If you're still here, still listening, then maybe you're ready to stop pretending. Ready to trade likes for lucidity, friends for freedom, comfort for character. Ready to stop being sociable and start being sovereign. Welcome to the fracture. Welcome to yourself. But be warned, this fracture isn't temporary. Once it splits you open, it doesn't close. It deepens. Now every time you hear small talk, you'll flinch. Every time someone fakes a laugh, you'll see it. Every time you're invited to conform, your mind will resist. Not out of arrogance, but because something in you has awakened. The part Machiavelli whispered to across centuries. The part that knows clarity is the only real power, not status, not popularity, not praise, clarity. A mind free of interference, judgment free of dependency, a truth that doesn't wobble under pressure. And that, my friend, is dangerous. Not because it harms others, but because it disrupts the system. The system feeds on conformity, on politeness, on unspoken contracts to never look too closely at the illusions we all agree to live inside. You weren't meant to obey those illusions. You were meant to break them. But you've been sedated, trained, socialized into smiling when you should question, into clapping when you should critique, into nodding when your very instincts scream no. And slowly, your edge dulled, your fire dimmed, your mind became an accessory to your image. You started thinking for effect, not for truth. Speaking to perform, not to explore. And now you're here, at war with that performance. Tired of wearing masks. Tired of not knowing which version of you is real. And you want out. But getting out doesn't mean vanishing. It means detaching. It means showing up without bending. Being in the world, but not owned by it. Being visible, but not deluded. Being known, but never predictable. That's the essence of Machiavellian detachment. Play the game, but never become it. Smile, but never kneel. Speak, but never chase validation. Show your teeth when necessary, but never your need. Because the world doesn't respect those who need it too much. The world devours those who try too hard to belong. And the world elevates those who can walk away from it. That's why the sovereign mind stands out. It carries an aura that comes from absence, not presence. The sovereign mind commands respect, not by being everywhere, but by being uncatchable. And most people hate what they can't predict. That's where your power lies. In your unpredictability, in your refusal to play roles that cost you your soul. In your silence when the crowd screams. In your stillness when everyone else dances for attention. You become the anchor in a storm of noise, the reminder that not everyone is bought, that not everyone has a price. People won't know what to do with you. Some will admire you, some will attack you, most will misunderstand you. Let them. That's not your burden. Clarity comes at the cost of comfort, and you've paid that cost, or you're beginning to. So now the only question left is, what kind of life do you want to live? One built on performance and applause, or one that feels like yours, even in silence, even in rejection, even in solitude? Most choose the former. It's easier, softer. You get the likes, the parties, the praise, but you also get the rot, the slow corrosion of knowing you're a product, not a person, a reaction, not a cause, a mimic, not a mind. But if you choose the latter, if you choose sovereignty, you walk alone, at least at first. But it's a walk that forges kings, not clowns. You begin to think differently, speak differently, live differently. You say no more often. You stop explaining yourself. You let silence speak for you. You don't chase friendships. You attract respect. You don't ask for support. You build strength. And in that transformation, something extraordinary happens. People begin to adjust to your reality. The very crowd you once tried to please now shifts to accommodate you, not because you begged, but because you became unbending. Machiavelli wrote that it's better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. But the sovereign mind doesn't need fear or love. It demands space. It doesn't beg for admiration. It earns distance, and distance becomes respect. Stop apologizing for your seriousness, for your intensity, for your depth. The world has enough clowns, enough people who are easy to digest and forget. You weren't made to be forgettable. You were made to disturb, to wake up, to shake minds out of their comfort. But to do that, you must stop being sociable. Not stop being kind, but stop being fake. Stop choosing connection over truth. Stop equating attention with affection. Let people misunderstand you. Let them gossip. Let them drift away. You're not here to maintain their illusions. You're here to burn yours. Ask yourself, who am I performing for? Who benefits from this version of me and who suffers? Usually it's you. You suffer. Your mind suffers. Your truth suffers. So stop. Stop feeding the lie. Stop drinking the poison of social ease. The more you obey it, the more it owns you. And then one day, you'll wake up with a successful life and a mind that feels like a stranger. You'll have friends, fame, even power, but no voice, no clarity, no edge. A polished machine in a world of machines. Is that what you want? Or do you want to remain wild, raw, electric, real? You can't have both. You must choose. The road of real intelligence is lonely. It's brutal. But it's the only road that leads to yourself. And at the end of that road, you don't find applause. you find peace. Peace that doesn't depend on being liked. Confidence that isn't fed by compliments. Identity that doesn't wobble in a storm. Machiavelli knew this. He knew that human nature is weak, that most people can't hold truth without flinching, that most prefer beautiful lies over ugly clarity. And he didn't pity them. He didn't try to change them. He simply built a philosophy for those who could handle power without illusion. And now you hold that philosophy in your hands, not the cleaned up, Instagram-friendly version, but the real thing, sharp, cold, liberating. What you do with it is up to you. You can walk away, or you can walk through. Burn your fake smiles. Burn your need to fit in. Burn the scripts you've rehearsed for social survival. And when the smoke clears, let's see what's left. If it's confusion, good. If it's silence, better. If it's pain, perfect. That's how you know you're shedding. That's how you know you're leaving sociability behind. And what replaces it won't be empty. It'll be real, sharp, clear, and entirely yours. Welcome to the other side. Because clarity is not a final destination, it's a battlefield. The moment you start seeing through the game changes tactics. People who once smiled at you will now squint. They'll call you off, distant, too intense. Not because you've changed, but because you've stopped dancing to their rhythm. The moment you no longer echo their thoughts, they feel exposed. And exposure breeds resentment. Prepare for it. Embrace it. Machiavelli never promised safety. He offered strategy. And the strategy is simple. Think for yourself. Act with precision. Never let your hunger for approval dictate your decisions. The smarter you get, the lonelier it feels. But that loneliness is not emptiness. It's refinement. It's the absence of noise. It's the silence required to tune into your internal compass. That compass won't lead you to comfort, but it will lead you to truth. And truth, once yours, is impossible to trade for applause. Because clarity is not a final destination, it's a battlefield. The moment you start seeing through the game changes tactics. People who once smiled at you will now squint. They'll call you off, distant, too intense, not because you've changed, but because you've stopped dancing to their rhythm. The moment you no longer echo their thoughts, they feel exposed. And exposure breeds resentment. Prepare for it. Embrace it. Machiavelli never promised safety. He offered strategy. And the strategy is simple. Think for yourself. Act with precision. Never let your hunger for approval dictate your decisions. The smarter you get, the lonelier it feels. But that loneliness is not emptiness. It's refinement. It's the absence of noise. It's the silence required to tune into your internal compass. That compass won't lead you to comfort, but it will lead you to truth. And truth, once yours, is impossible to trade for applause. You'll find yourself in rooms where everyone is laughing, and you'll feel hollow inside. You'll hear conversations and recognize the recycled phrases, the scripts people run to avoid thought. And you'll stay quiet. Not because you don't have something to say, but because nothing real can survive in that shallow air. You'll leave parties earlier. You'll stop answering calls that don't feed your mind. You'll begin to build a life with fewer people, but stronger bonds. And even then, you'll keep a part of yourself guarded, not out of fear, but out of value. You'll learn that your mind is no longer for public consumption. It's a weapon, and weapons are not toys. Not everyone gets to hold them. Not everyone deserves access. This will scare others. They'll sense you've changed. Even if they can't explain it, they'll say, "You're not the same." And you'll smile, not to agree, but to acknowledge the obvious. You're not the same because you've stopped being negotiable. The old version of you, the sociable one, was available, approachable, relatable. This version, it's elusive, reserved, strategic. People sense you've stopped needing them, and it unsettles them. Because in a world addicted to attention, indifference is power. And when you no longer flinch at the threat of being alone, you become untouchable. Understand this: being misunderstood is not a flaw, it's a filter. It keeps out the ones who are only drawn to your image, not your essence. Every time you're misread, it's the universe removing distractions from your path. Every misjudgment is a layer of camouflage being peeled away, revealing who actually sees you. And if no one does, good. Then you finally get the opportunity to see yourself. Not the version you show others, but the raw, unfiltered consciousness behind your eyes. That is where sovereignty begins, not in performance, but in presence. The kind of presence that doesn't shrink or swell depending on who's watching. The kind of presence that sits in silence with itself and feels no urge to escape. That presence terrifies society because it can't be bought, can't be guilted, can't be manipulated. It's what Machiavelli called fortitude of spirit, the inner resilience that kings possess. But this spirit doesn't arrive through praise. It's built in solitude, tempered in rejection, forged in moments where everyone leaves and you remain undaunted. This isn't romantic, it's ruthless. But it's the only path to self-command. And that command? It's the birthplace of power. Not the kind that screams, but the kind that walks into a room and makes others adjust. Without words, without effort, just presence, just truth, just unmistakable clarity. But that clarity must be defended, because the world will try to pull you back with distractions, with guilt, with seduction. It'll whisper, "Come back just a little. Be more friendly. Be more agreeable." And the moment you obey, you lose edge. You dull the blade. And soon, you're back to echoing, nodding, smiling through teeth clenched with silent rage. Don't go back. Not even for love. Not even for comfort. Because what you're building isn't temporary. It's a legacy, a standard, a code. The code of someone who thinks before they speak, who watches before they act, who doesn't just react to the world, but reshapes it through discipline. And here's what they don't tell you. Real discipline is lonely. It's walking away from drama that once excited you. It's turning down invitations that once made you feel important. It's saying no so many times you forget what fake enthusiasm feels like. But in that void, clarity, peace. You stop needing to be stimulated. You become the source of your own energy, your own guidance. And from that place, every choice becomes sharper, every word more intentional, every connection more deliberate. You stop collecting people. You start curating them. You stop chasing relevance. You start embodying excellence. That is what Machiavellian intelligence looks like in the modern age. Not manipulation, but mastery. Not deception, but discretion. Not charisma, but control. It's not about being feared, it's about being respected in silence. It's about people wondering what you're thinking, but never being sure. It's about maintaining a level of mystery that makes people lean in, yet never get too close. Not because you're hiding, but because you've realized not everything should be exposed, especially not your mind. That's your kingdom. Guard it, sharpen it, rule it, and from there, shape the world not through noise, but through consequence. Your presence becomes a message. Your silence becomes a strategy. Your refusal to be sociable becomes a standard. People won't say it out loud, but they'll feel it. You're different, not superior, just sovereign, not louder, just rooted. And in that quiet certainty, conformity dies. Because conformity needs company, needs validation, needs the group to feel real. Intelligence just is, with or without applause, with or without followers, with or without conversation. And that's the final step, to become so grounded in who you are that even when you're alone, you are never lonely. Because the company you keep in your own mind is enough. You've made it through noise, through dependence, through identity erosion. You've walked through the fire of rejection and come out sharper, colder maybe, but truer. And now you are the kind of person who doesn't need to shout to be heard. who doesn't need to justify truth, who doesn't bend for acceptance, because you've remembered what society made you forget, that the mind, when sovereign, is the most feared force in existence. So from here forward, be feared. Not because you're cruel, but because you're clear. Not because you dominate, but because you cannot be owned. And most of all, be feared because you no longer speak from a need to connect, but from a place of having already arrived. And when you arrive like that, without apology, without performance, without looking over your shoulder for approval, something happens that terrifies those still trapped in the crowd. You no longer play by their rules, and yet you still win. Not by competing, but by detaching. Not by dominating the room, but by making the room adjust to your silence. Your very presence becomes a contradiction. You don't fight for attention, yet people feel your absence. You don't shout to be understood, yet your silence echoes longer than their noise. That's not mystique, that's power, but not the kind sold in self-help books or whispered in locker rooms. This is Machiavellian power, sourced not from chaos, but from clarity. Not from manipulation, but from mastery over your emotional appetite, the appetite to please, to belong, to fit in. You've starved it, and in starving it, you fed something higher, your integrity. And now comes the true test of what you've become. Not whether you can stay detached in silence, but whether you can remain sovereign when others try to pull you back in. When they flatter you with invitations you used to crave. When they say, "We miss the old you," hoping you'll slip back into the version of yourself that was easier for them to manage. But that version is gone. It died the moment you realized every smile you forced was a small betrayal. Every nod you faked was a quiet mutiny against your own mind. And you buried that version without a funeral, quietly, alone, as it should be. Because rebirth never comes with applause. It comes in silence, through sacrifice. So when the world offers you the same old deals, visibility for authenticity, popularity for peace, relevance for restlessness, you'll smile. Not because you're tempted, but because you remember how loud the prison was, how cheap the praise felt, how much you had to fake to stay accepted. And you'll walk away again, not out of bitterness, but out of memory. And that memory, that lived experience of what it costs to be sociable, will become your compass. You'll feel it in your bones. Every time you water yourself down, you lose flavor. Every time you echo instead of think, you lose edge. And every time you kneel for applause, you lose altitude. So you rise, not for show, not for revenge, but because it's the only direction left once you've burned the masks and kept the mind. Most people age but never evolve. They become more polished, but not more profound, more sociable, but not more self-aware. But you've chosen the harder path, the lonelier one. And in doing so, you've escaped something most never notice. The loop. The endless circle of proving, pleasing, performing. You stepped out of it. And now you're here. Not perfect, not finished, but free. And freedom, once tasted, cannot be untasted. You'll never return to small talk with the same smile. You'll never say, "I'm fine," without flinching. You'll never sit in a crowd and forget who you are. Because now you carry your clarity like armor, silent, invisible, but impenetrable. So go ahead. Let them talk. Let them wonder. Let them call you cold, arrogant, aloof. Wear it like a crown. Because what they call arrogance is often just boundary. What they call aloofness is discernment. What they call coldness is clarity, too sharp to hold in bare hands. Let them choke on their judgments. Let them echo each other to death. You've transcended the script. You no longer need a part in their play because you've become the author, the narrator, the editor of your own presence. And now that you know what you are, protect it. Build around it. Fortify it. Let no weak hand near your mind. Let no soft voice sway your compass. Let no comfortable lie tempt you back into the theater. You've seen behind the curtain. You've seen what sociability costs. And you've chosen something rare, something terrifying, something sacred. To be clear, no matter who stays or leaves, that's not cruelty, that's conviction, that's not detachment, that's ascension. You are no longer one of many, you are one of one.